Hi, this is Rachel Ryder, author of Who You Are is How You Lead. I am also the founder and CEO of MettaWorks. And on my episode for the Business Growth Architect show, I will discuss how the fundamental key to unlocking potential as a high-powered executive is spirituality. Check out the full episode right now.
And hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here. I am the host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and I want to welcome you to today's episode where we discuss how to navigate strategy and spirituality to achieve time and financial freedom. Truly successful people have learned how to master both a clear intention and a strategy to execute that in a spiritual practice that will help them to stay in alignment and on purpose. Please enjoy the show and listen to what our guest today has to say about this very topic. Hello and welcome back. This is your host, Beate Gillette. Today I'm talking to Rachel Ryder from MettaWorks. And what we're going to talk about today is a really kind of critical conversation. When you are wanting to develop spirituality, passion, and purpose, how do you do that, especially when you're in maybe a job where people don't expect you to be, how would I put it, Rachel, more on the fuzzy side? So, woo, exactly. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
So, for somebody who doesn't know who you are or has never heard about you, what do you do? How do you help your clients?
So I'm an executive coach. I work with high net worth clients, high profile clients. The MettaWorks is the company that I run. It's a small boutique coaching firm. And we grew up in the world of tech, coaching tech executives and leaders, and really have been moving in this very natural direction of folks who are really hungry for what we have to offer, which is an alignment of mind, body, and spirit, and helping you unlock your stuckness, particularly for very successful, very high stakes, high profile clients.
Excellent. So, would it be fair to say that people that come to you are not necessarily on the woo woo side? Because a lot of people in tech, there's a lot of IQ, there's a lot of intelligence, there's a lot of logic, coding, systems, processes. So, tell us a little bit sort of what happens when you're in this hard charging world of tech where, things have to make sense. They either are or they aren't.
It's interesting because my clients none of them would identify as woo, and they have a searching heart. And I say that because they wouldn't work with me or the coach who works for me otherwise. But there may not be language around that yet. So usually the opener is desperation. Now, I say that in a very interesting context because most of my clients are incredibly successful. They don't come to me to make more money. Most of my clients are very well known. They're very well respected. They come to me because someone's having a panic attack or someone is completely immobilized by making a very high stakes decision. And so my clients get confused. They're like, wait, everything is fine on the outside. Why is it not working on the inside? That's why they come to me. And so that's kind of the yearning desperation, the yearning heart of I have it all and something's not working. And I do believe that that's the way in to connecting to that which is bigger than you.
I like that definition. So it's not necessarily a rock bottom, but what you just described is almost like there's a disconnect. I have this persona over here, and then there's a disconnect to how I feel inside, to the persona I feel inside.
You nailed it. You're a good coach.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I mean, I always say it's a perception question because there is on the outside the perception other people have of you supersedes how you see yourself because that is the persona you're successfully portraying. But what happens to me as a person, to my mental, emotional well-being if I have a disconnect between how I feel about myself and how the rest of the world sees me? What goes on?
I think that's exactly, you've described the issue of when a client comes to me, I'm having a panic attack or I'm immobilized by a decision or everything feels so big. I'm not looking at my calendar for the next day and I'm not waking up for my meetings with very important people. Well, you've just described what's happening, that the way I feel inside is not the way my life looks outside. I'll tell you a very common connective thread that I see with a lot of my clients, which is who am I without?
My
Who am
job.
I exactly? Who am I without the title? Who am I without the well-knownness? Who am I without the respect or the money? And so the reason why that's such an important question is because that's the pull. Like, oh, there's a lot of money on the line, so I can't make a decision because I don't know who I like. What if I lose the money? Who am I? And so that who am I without becomes so big that it immobilizes behavior. And so that's the piece that's so important in the work that I do, and why I deeply believe that spirituality is what's going to get you through as a highly successful person, because it allows you to let go of the stakes. It allows you to surrender into the bigness so that you can make a clear decision, so that you can feel whole with your big, beautiful life and not feel victim of it.
What would you say to somebody who is now starting to be a little bit confused because they're very strategic and they say, "Are you saying spirituality is a strategy?"
I mean, I hate to commoditize it, but I think that the most successful and happy people in their success are deeply spiritual. And I want to be very clear. I mean spirituality in whatever way that means to you. In the end, I'm saying you feel connected to something bigger than you, even if it's all of the other human beings on this planet, even if it's to the tree outside your door, or God, or your ancestors, or Mother Earth. The reason why this is so important is because it allows you to feel less alone. So let's get concrete. I have a CEO who came to me debilitating panic attacks. It's getting in the way with his board trusting him, with his leaders feeling like he was okay and had it together. And so he came to me, and we did a lot of work on his nervous system and connecting to the divine. The first time I did a meditation with him around connecting to the divine, at the end of the 30 minutes, he looked at me and he said, "That's the first time I didn't feel alone in this." The power of that meant that he felt like he had his back. He was held by something bigger. Everything he was holding was held with him, so that he didn't feel crippling anxiety around it and could actually move forward with a clear decision. And through this work, his panic attacks stopped. That's the power of this work.
So for me, right, as I think there is a common assumption that spirituality is woo-woo. I believe that we need to make a distinction between religion, organized religion, God, yeah, a spiritual mindset. I like calling it one source. And I like calling it one source because it's a non-confrontational term. I have friends that unless you believe in Jesus, they think you need to, repent and spend some time in penance. But I believe that the connection to something that's outside of yourself ultimately helps us to stay in a better mental state because, as you just said, this feeling of alone, that it's all on me, that I have no power over anything, is the key component for, I think, a lot of this depression and the mental health crisis that we're seeing. But at the same time, there is the issue of control. So if I'm the CEO of a company, if I'm a high level position, I'm an entrepreneur, I run the company, I am trusted to make decisions for other people. Other people's lives depend on my ability to make decisions. That means that I need to be in control. But spirituality, a lot of times, is about letting go of control and surrendering to a larger thing. As we're diving in sort of the more spiritual aspect of the show, what would be a way for you to explain that? Because I literally just got a LinkedIn comment on one of my interviews yesterday, and somebody says, "Well, if I need to be in control, how does this even work? How do I connect with the spirituality?" So how do people tap into that? How do we even start? How do we explain it?
Yeah, that's such a wonderful question. So the first thing, unfortunately, that I would challenge for those saying I need to be in control is, unfortunately, you are not.
You heard it on this podcast first.
That's actually one of the things that really makes someone crazy who is in a position of power and influence and running organizations. The more you think you're going to be in control when you squeeze tighter or manage closer, the crazier you will become, the more exhausted, immobilized, and burnt out. When you are at the top of an organization, I guarantee, I know it, I'm speaking to even you, the most control freaks, that you have been in moments of flow where you have seen your organization running and buzzing and humming without you doing anything but sitting there and connecting with your people. That experience, that moment, even if it was a millisecond moment for you, is what we're talking about when we talk about spirituality. It's that experience of being in flow and trust. And I want to be very clear, this does not mean you abandon, you wash your hands of. This means that you stand in the places that you are best and then trust the rest. Allow for flow. It's funny, as I'm talking, I actually feel like spirituality is the more sophisticated level of Leadership 101. Leadership 101, we talk about delegation, empowering your people, fostering connections. Spirituality is taking that and trusting that on such a deep level that when you are in alignment and you are doing what is best for you, everything else will flow.
So powerful. And you and I, we had spoken about this when we spoke for the first time. And I keep talking about it because it was such a profound experience for me when I did my ayahuasca journey. And I feel that was a rough ride for me. Going in and dealing with things that, as an adult, a logical adult, I can explain away. I said, well, other people had a tough childhood. Other people have been abused. I wasn't the only person that was hit. I mean, these things are logically to explain. Does the trauma come up in your work, and does the trauma show up in how people lead?
Oh, without question. I mean, you bring yourself to work. I wrote a book called Who You Are is How You Lead. And I say work is where your demons go to hide. They love to nestle themselves in work because when you're in therapy, you're looking at your relationships, your mother, your daughter, whatever. Your demons get to just nestle into your work without being attended to. And so one of the pieces that I love about really examining how you show up as a leader is it kind of approaches that trauma from a different lens. And in my work, we're not going to talk about your trauma, and it still will be addressed. It may arise. So I had a client once where this was years ago when I was coaching all different kinds of leaders, and he would start to dissociate when his boss walked close to him. And we were like, what's going on? And he would become disorganized and he was a really high profile client. Companies hire me to work with their people. And he was like, I don't understand. And we had been working and there was this moment where he was like, oh my God, my boss reminds me of my alcoholic father. This was a woman, but she had the essence of his father. And so I told him, okay, I want you to take the relationship you had with your alcoholic father to your therapist. You guys work on that. What we're going to do is work on the way your nervous system responds to your boss. We're going to help educate your nervous system about how she's not an alcoholic father. We're going to help you orient to who she is and what you're picking up on because your nervous system's smart. She is aggressive. She is intrusive. She is demeaning publicly. So how do we help you navigate that as your adult self without thinking you're dealing with your father? And so that's really the beautiful piece I think about this kind of coaching is without fail, those traumas arise and translate into the workplace. And we can work on them from a different angle.
So powerful. Thank you. We'll dive a little bit more about how to manage your neurological response in just a moment, right after this message. Rachel, I feel like we're going really deep here today in the podcast and talking about some of these things. So to just recap what we talked about, I do believe that our trauma shows up how we lead. And as a traumatized person, I will be a traumatized wife, traumatized husband, traumatized partner, traumatized parent, and I'm going to be a traumatized leader. Because what I did not get, I am going to try to create to get from those around me. Because if I've never felt that way, I need to get it from somewhere else because I can't feel this from myself. So you had said that the nervous system has responses. So give me some ideas or give our audience a couple of examples. How do I recognize if my nervous system is freaking out?
So this may be very well known to most folks. If you're in this area, I've been trained in somatic experiencing, which is regulation of the nervous system after trauma. And it talks about how the nervous system has 4 responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They all sound what they are like. You either fight, you are incredibly reactive and defensive. Someone says something to you, you go for the throat. Flight, you run away. Whether you can physically run away or dissociate, you are gone. Freeze, you're like a deer in headlights. You cannot speak. You cannot respond. You cannot move. And fawn, you're overly complimentary. You over accommodate. Anything you want, you got it, and your sense of self disappears. These are all survival mechanisms of the nervous system. And so one way to start to understand which one is your favorite, mine is fight and flight. I love to dissociate and I love to attack. I'm really good at both. Fawn, I'm not so
I'm
good
an
at.
excellent runner. I think I run further and farther than most. Yes.
Congratulations. That's a great survival mechanism.
Yeah.
So I would say first start to pay attention to what's your fave. What's your favorite way to respond? The other thing that I would say that I write about in my book, and also just we do so much work with is when we work with our people, is there are such nuggets of wisdom in whatever response you have. It's often one of your superpowers. And the piece of the work is understanding how that survival mechanism isn't in charge of you, but you can be in charge of it. It becomes the red flag. Hey, Rachel, watch out for this person. They are not safe for you. Instead of, so that when it's the warning flag, you get to say, you know what, that's true, but in this moment, I need to talk to them. I need to show up for this meeting. Or I'm walking down a dark alley in this moment. That is true. And I got to get out of here. But I am the decision maker. That's when we are in charge of our survival mechanism. When we are not in charge, the survival mechanism is reacting immediately. That's when we walk out of the meeting, we're like, shit, why? How did that happen? Why did I do that? That's when the survival mechanism is in charge. So cultivating awareness around this is very powerful, because when you become in charge of your survival mechanism, it becomes a superpower.
Talk to me about some of the modalities that you're using. I know that you like crystals, that you've done a tremendous amount of different courses and continuous education. What are you finding works? I mean, and just for full disclaimer, that what we talk about in the show is obviously not all that there is, but I am talking, Rachel, for her personal opinion on what she has seen work in her experience. So go ahead. Would you mind sharing some things of what can I do?
It'd be my pleasure. So I've been on a path for a very long time. When I was 13, I became a Zen Buddhist practitioner, very serious. I've been doing week-long silent meditation retreats for a very long time. I would say that was my beginning work with the mind. So if you are a very cognitive person and that starting with the mind appeals to you, I would say start with meditation, start noticing your thought patterns, start paying attention to which thoughts do you want to believe, which thoughts are unhelpful. I think meditation can be a very powerful tool. When you add to that somatic experiencing, which is understanding the nervous system, where is my nervous system stuck responding from a place of trauma? Where am I in flow? When the mind and the body work together, that becomes a very powerful tool. And so in the nervous system, first step, let's identify your favorite survival mechanism: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's a great first step. So I would say that's mind and body. I'm also in training for the past year, 3 past years seriously, in shamanism. That's my connection to the spiritual. That's where I've really cultivated an understanding relationship to crystals. I've been trained by a Taoist stone expert. I'm not sure what the terminology is, but he 81st generation. So in his family, he's been an 81st generation Taoist priest who trains in crystals. Pairing the crystals to the shamanic work, which in my experience is the relationship I have with the natural world, has been incredibly powerful for me, because it has been able to articulate what I've always known, which is even if you can't see energy, you can feel it. How do you work with that? How do you work with the energy between you and me? If it's sticky or funky, or if it's wonderful, how do we stay in flow? And so to me, that's the spirit piece. That's the surrender piece. That's the trust. That's the not check out. You stay present in your life, but then you trust when you show up, it works. And so I think dependent on what resonates when you hear that list, I'd say start there. That's a beautiful place.
Yeah, that brings us up so much. I think if we take it home for the beehive, I will say that you recognizing that when you walk in a room and you talk to someone, say, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I've known you forever. I feel like you're my sister from a different mother or brother from a different mother," that you have this automatic connection. You can't really explain it. That's energy. When you walk out of the door and you have a weird feeling, that's energy. when you are concerned that something's going to happen today and you kind of don't know. And then, your nephew calls you, says he's in a car accident. That's energy. And to open that up and to step into it, the more you do, the more the connection receptors are open and the more this energy kind of flows. And what fascinates me about you, Rachel, is because when we think executive leadership coach, right? I just want to make sure that we really, really covered this on the show today. When I think about executive leadership coach, I think about, forgive my bias here, high heels, the tight skirt, like in Billions, the TV show, that clarity and a little bit confrontational, better performance type of thing. Executives come to you because they're looking for something that they cannot find somewhere else. Once you start sort of going into that, and I don't even know how to formulate this question, but what is it that makes them have that recognition that they're ready for this? Because they're probably not looking for this. They're probably looking for the other, right?
Yes, desperation. Usually people come to me with impossible situations. It feels impossible. They've tried a lot of other things, or they don't even know how to articulate what's going on. That CEO with the panic attacks came to me not with that. He was, I'm thinking about where I want to take the company, and I just want to make sure I show up well, and I feel like something's stuck. And then in our first session, he was like, oh yeah, I'm having panic attacks and I think it's getting in the way of everything. So even cognitively, his heart was saying, I desperately need help. He couldn't even
Articulate it.
Exactly. Usually folks come to me. I had a client come to me. It was a hundreds of millions of dollar contract that was at his door, and he could not sign the paperwork. But he couldn't say no. He was completely immobilized. And he was like, I do not understand what's happening. It's like, it's good money, but I have to relocate my family. He was like, I make just huge decisions every day. I don't know what's happening. And I'll tell you, we barely talked about the pros and cons of the decision. We did meditations to help him to connect to spirit. We pulled energies out of his body, like his mother's voice and his dead father. This was deep work. And he came to me because it felt an impossible situation and he couldn't think his way through it. So I think you nailed it. People don't come saying, oh, hey, I want to connect with.
Let's go woo-woo. And so they come to you for something else, and then somehow that's where the path ends up.
Yes, that's the magic that we offer.
Yeah, I mean, I love this magic, and I think it's an important conversation to have. I agree with you. I don't think there are very few successful people that don't have a spiritual practice. Most people that I speak to that are successful have a spiritual practice and they believe in something other than themselves. I always think about Princess Leia quote, and somewhere around that, when she says to Han Solo, if money's all you want, money shall be all you get. But I do believe we are in a different moment in time where I see this less and less and less. I mean, yes, if you go to online marketing, you still see the Ferraris and the guys with a stack of cash, but it feels really trite and unimportant. I think people are looking for something deeper. What would you say? I mean, you said meditation, understanding your four responses. Is there anything else that somebody who's listened to your interview now can take away and say, okay, I have a feeling that there might be something I need to look into, but I don't even know where to start?
Yeah. I would even begin with checking in with yourself and asking yourself, when was a moment this week you felt most like you? Not having to think about what that means, but just feeling in your body. When was a moment this week you felt most like you? That experience is usually connected to your internal compass, the place that is your authentic self. And when you tap into that, you can make decisions, think from this deeper place. And so I would ask yourself that question, where do I want to begin to that place that has felt most like you?
That's a wonderful way to start. This has been just so powerful, and I feel a very deep conversation about stuff most people don't really want to talk about, or they want to talk about it, but they don't know how to talk about it because those two things seemingly don't go together, but we know that they do. So, Rachel, for somebody who's listened to this and says, I need to speak to her, maybe she can help me with what I'm going through, where would we want them to go?
Find us at MettaWorks.io. That's METTAWORKS.io. You can also find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at meta.works.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. And we've gone woo woo and loved every minute of it.
Agreed. It was such a pleasure.
Excellent. All right. And that is it for us for today. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, your time that you're here, that you're listening to this. Whatever you want is out there. It's possible for you. As you see in this and other conversations, spirituality and strategy do go hand in hand. And until next time, and goodbye. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, a comment, and share this episode with one more person so that you can help us help more people. Thank you again. Until next time. Goodbye.